This message comes from Jackson. Taxes aren't something you can only think about once a year. With investments, planning for tax day is year-round. Fortunately, Jackson offers tax-efficient products. Visit jackson.com for more information on how our products can make your tax bill a little bit less painful. Jackson is short for Jackson Financial Incorporated, Jackson National Life Insurance Company, Lansing, Michigan, and Jackson National Life Insurance Company of New York, Purchase, New York.
Chicago, 2011. A cop is murdered. Police and prosecutors swear they have the trigger man. He swears he didn't do it. How far will each side go to prove they're right?
Like it's just one bombshell after another, where you're like, what?
The story of a PlayStation, a brain-eating amoeba, and the relentless pursuit of justice. Off Duty, out now. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Howdy, howdy, ho, and welcome to Fantasy Fan Fellas. I'm Hayden, producer of the Fantasy Fangirls podcast and your resident lover of all things Sanderson.
And I'm Steven, your bookish internet goofball, but you can call me the Smash Daddy.
And we are currently deep diving Brandon Sanderson's fantasy epic, Mistborn. But here's the catch. Steven here has not read Mistborn before.
That's right, hey. So each week, you'll get my unfiltered, raw reactions to every single chapter.
And along the way, we'll do character deep dives, magic explainers, and Steven will even try to guess what's next. Spoiler alert, he'll be wrong.
Newsflash, I'm never wrong. Episodes come out every Wednesday, and you can find Fantasy Fan Fellas wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello and welcome back to the Psych Legal Pop Podcast. This is a podcast where we talk about popular culture through the lens of an attorney and a therapist. I'm Tess Brigham, I'm the therapist.
And I'm Brooke Brigham, I'm the attorney.
And today we are covering the Netflix documentary Fit for TV, The Reality of the Biggest Loser. And this was an interesting one because I think that I watched it sort of on my own. I think you watched it kind of on your, we never talked about covering it. I think we each watched it on our own. Peggy, who's our social media manager, she watched it on her own. And we're all talking about it. And then we're like, well, maybe we should cover it. So that's the backstory to how we arrived here.
Well, yeah, The Biggest Loser has just been, I feel like, such a big part of my TV life history.
Yes.
I can't remember what year it premiered. Was it?
It was 2000 it was 2003 when it was developed. I think the first episode aired in 2004.
Okay. So I watched it in the beginning, I think pretty much every season. Then I may have taken a break and then gone back to it. But when I was watching it, I was visiting my daughter and she was watching it with me and she's like, "Oh, you've been watching this show forever."
You were watching the documentary. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. She was watching the documentary with me. And so she was born in 2003.
Mm-hmm.
So she remembers it from me watching it, in her childhood, which I was shocked. I was like, really? You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And because to me, I didn't think I watched it that consistently or that much. But then when I was watching the documentary, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that person. I remember that person. Maybe I watched this more than I thought that I did.
Yeah. Yeah. Because there were also, multiple seasons in a year. Because there was something like 17 seasons, but it ran 14 years, something like that. So there was something in there. Yeah. I've always found The Biggest Loser, the show and everything about it to be really fascinating. And I think this is why the documentary is so interesting, which is there's so many layers to this around. And I think very much it talks about reality TV of what is reality TV and what is the obligation of a reality TV show to the people that are participating. And, it speaks a lot to our culture and fat phobia and all of those other pieces of it. But I think the one thing that I remember, anytime anyone asked Richard Simmons about the show, I remember this very distinctly. He absolutely was like, money should never be, he hated the idea of the show. He thought it was a terrible idea. He thought it was awful. And I do believe that people who really understand, and again, I will get into this, but the way in which the contestants were treated by the producers, by the trainers, how they were sort of introduced to being more conscious about what you're eating and exercise and all of that is not, it's a really awful way. Yelling at people is not how you motivate them. End of story.
Right.
And so I always found that really fascinating because for me, I got married in 2003. And I was 30 and it's kind of in this in between place, but I was getting, I was getting on my hours for licensure. I was, I'd gone to grad school already. So I already knew about behavior and change and all this kind of stuff. So I always found the show fascinating to kind of watch these dynamics. But I thought there were a lot of problems with the show. I always felt like there were little things that no one ever talked about that now the show reveals. Even just how, I was like, they're all losing weight so rapidly. They must all have really loose skin. And it is always fascinating. Like in the beginning, they would have the men take off their shirts. But once they started losing weight, they didn't want people to see the loose skin. And he said, and I was like, now they're all wearing tank tops.
And they wore
I thought that was weird. Yes.
Yeah, he said they wore compression under compression shirt underneath. Yeah.
And I was like, I knew it. Like you could. So there were these moments in time where you're like, no one's talking about the fact that we've gone from jog bras and shirtless to these kind of tank tops. And why? Why now this? And it's very clear because we now need to show you, we need to keep all that skin tucked in. And we need to, and it's shapewear. Compression is shapewear.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I know. I guess when I was watching it, I wasn't really picking up too much on the negative things. I didn't like the yelling, the working out. I thought that was a bit much, but I felt like, oh, they're just exaggerating this for TV. And I always thought, I got caught up in the stories, and it's like, oh, it's so, it seemed inspirational or aspirational, to like, if these people can, do it, then so can you. And, like, look what they've done. It's so great. And, because of course you're never seeing the aftermath of it or anything bad that flows from it. It's just you're just seeing like all the positive stuff. And also they didn't show this in the documentary, but they did spend a lot of time talking about food. And in fact, it became like a commercial. I mean, it was like
for Subway.
Genio turkey, it's like, oh, here we're going to make our lunch. I'm going to show you how you can take this much turkey and you put it and you make these turkey tacos and it's only 3 grams of fat. And, so they turned it into commercials for food products, but they were talking about it and they were showing like what they would eat. And, it was a lot of fruits and vegetables and healthy meats and that kind of stuff. So I don't know, but I did not like those temptations. I always thought that was
I think
weird.
The temptations, which had got phased out, a lot of the temptations got phased out as the show went along. I agree with that producer. I think his name was JD Roth, who said there's temptations in life. And so I understood why they were doing it that way. Like, we have to make this realistic. What do we do? But again, yes, there's temptations all the time, but you're not going to have a plate of Oreos laid out on a table in your bedroom or in your house. Like you can control that. So I would think like it'd be better to have temptations outside. Like let's show us what would be a more natural temptation. The one thing you can control on some level is what you bring into your house.
Right.
So yeah, the temptations were bad. There were a lot of like really bad lines, like you cut the fat or we're cutting the fat and now you're out. And that was the other thing too. And I think what bothered everybody about the show was that the show was helping people and providing something to people that really did need it. And it's a unique experience. And someone could absolutely get a tremendous amount of health benefits and it could be life-changing for them. And at the same time, you are producing a TV show.
Right.
And I think that sort of what we saw with all the people that we interview on the show is this push-pull of, how do I say this? Like this thing between the, like, what's justified? What's okay? Is it okay because it was a show? Is it because it's on network television? Like, and it has to be entertaining and a ratings grab. So is that an okay excuse for these other things? Right? It's always been problematic. And I think that it's very frustrating to watch these trainers and these producers tell us, yeah, a little problematic, but not too much. And it's like, no, it's been problematic, and it's not a good way. It's inspirational in a lot of ways, but it's also unrealistic in a lot of ways, because most people can't do what they do.
Right.
You cannot do this. And so it isn't realistic for the at-home person.
No, it's not. You can't quit your job and like work out like this for, however many months they do it. Yeah. And the one saving grace is, they had Dr. Huenga or
Dr. H. Dr. H. Just call him that.
Who was very ethical. And I think he did stop a lot of things and was taking it seriously. And, but even still, even with him, like things were happening, that he didn't know about. And the working out for, well, that's the thing. They wanted them to lose so much weight in such a short period of time. And with weight loss, in my experience, it's really all about the food.
Yeah, it is. And Bob Harper says that.
Yeah, you cannot lift a finger. And I've done this many times. I have not changed anything about my exercising. Just like quit eating so much and you lose 30 pounds. I mean, it's like, you don't have to exercise to lose weight. And that's what always got me is like, why are they working out 6 to 8 hours a day until you're puking? And I think a lot of that was theatrics in the gym.
Yeah. It was more interesting. That's just more interesting than someone with a food scale weighing chicken, like watching someone like put how many cucumbers in a salad, right? Like nobody wants to watch that at all.
I really wonder if they had just done the diet and then done some light exercise, like walking and maybe a little light weight lifting, for a couple hours a day. I think they may have lost the same amount of weight. I just didn't see how all that heavy exercising was helping. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and I think the exercise became about, and we'll hear this later on from, what's her name? Aubrey Gordon, author of You Just Need to Lose Weight, co-host of Maintenance Phase. Have you heard of this podcast?
Yeah.
And I know that's a very popular podcast, and she's sort of the voice of reason in many ways. She's sort of talking about the society part. The part that has always bugged me is that at the end of the day, this is truly, you cannot call this about transformation and weight loss. And I'm sorry, you cannot talk about this being a transformation and health and all of that if people are getting kicked off based on the number of pounds they lose.
Right.
And that is the bottom line of it. And I've seen a lot of other shows, a lot of other weight loss shows where what they will do is, and again, not as exciting, not big transformations, but much more realistic where, they would get like 6 people who had all gained like 40, 50 pounds, middle-aged. It's a little bit of a contest, but, at the end, they don't win money and they were judged. These people would be judged for everything. The one woman, she won, not because she lost the most weight, but she had a candy business. And so they felt like she was a woman in menopause. And so
what show was this?
I don't know. It was on some weird like Discovery ID channel or something. I don't know. It was and they had regular people for a couple years. They would get like 6 people. And then one year they got celebrities to do it. Like Erica Estrada was on the show and Peter and Cindy from Brady Bunch and some of that too. But I thought like that was an example because the issue with this show at the end of the day is it was a competition. It wasn't that it was all about everybody's at the ranch at the same time and whoever loses the most weight at the end. It's like, no, you had to fight every single week to stay. So whether the producers told you clearly or not, it was about survival. So it was about doing whatever you needed to do that day, right. And even though those things were completely unhealthy for you, like, and that's the problem. They knew they were setting people up for that. There's no way that you can have people be eliminated for weight, put money on it, and yell at them constantly with this, if you don't, pick up that weight, if you don't do this, you're going to go home. Like the constant threat of you're going to go home, you're going to go home, you're going to go home. So how do you think that person who is isolated away from their family, how do you think they're going to, they're going to figure out how to stay? And they're going to do a lot of dangerous, unhealthy things.
And I never understood, why couldn't they talk to their family? Why can't they have phone calls? They would do these competitions where, if you win this temptation thing, you get a 5-minute phone call home. And it's just like, why can't they call home?
I don't know. That again, because that's part of a competition. Like it becomes competition. That's.
I think they don't want you, getting like emotional on the phone and like thinking, I just want to go home. I'm going to quit. But there's a lot of cruel things involved.
Yeah. So, I mean, the show skips around a lot, but basically we start with, they introduce various people that were on the show throughout it. And the first person that we meet is Danny Cahill, who was the season 8 winner. And he weighed over 400 pounds. And he had been watching the show and he decided to audition. He was worried that they were making fun of fat people, but he eventually, it was like, I auditioned several times. I think the third time he finally got on. And then we have this big reveal where we see that Danny had lost something like 240 pounds. Like I think he started over 400 pounds and lost 240. And we saw him and he got the skin surgery. We saw him in Kelly Ripa and we saw him on all these TV shows, on The Doctors. We saw him everywhere. And now we see him again. And it's like, he's gained it all back. I mean, and I think he looks heavier than he was before.
More, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Even heavier. We never really, I think I understand how this happened, but he doesn't really ever talk about it. Like, then this happened, then this happened. But I think, again, it's, the problem is that you are being weighed in a moment where, again, you've done a ton of things to be unhealthy. So again, it's the same thing. It's the same thing that Oprah went through when she lost weight the first time. Was like the minute the minute she stopped the shakes and started eating again, she started gaining weight. So anyway, but the whole thing starts because this producer, David Broom, is at the gym and he sees a sign that says, "Help needed, obese person seeking trainer." And he's like, oh, that's it. That's the show. And so it's David Broom and this other guy, JD Roth. They're the 2 executive producers. And their idea was like, what if we made the scale the star? And what if it was about weight loss with no surgery and no gimmicks and no, supplements and none of that, like pure, what would happen? And, and so they hire these 2 trainers, Bob Harper and Jillian Michaels. And so Jillian was the tough one and Bob was sort of the more holistic, nice one. But as we learned from this documentary, Bob's a dick.
Yeah.
An asshole. He really is.
He is.
And did you remember that Caroline Ray was the host the first 3 seasons?
Yeah.
And apparently like the first episode, people were losing double digits. They were losing 12 pounds, 16 pounds. And they were like, okay, we got a hit. Like, this is interesting. This is fascinating. So, and then we meet Ryan, who was actually the very first winner of the show. And again, he's gained all the weight back. And he talks about how the day he weighed in, that last day on the finale, he had blood in his urine. And the producers knew that because he said the last 10 days he did the master cleanse, basically. So the last 10 days, So they would always they would go to the ranch, and then they would get down to like the finalists, and then the finalists would have to then go back home. And then there was something like a month or something in between, or 2 or 3 months in between, where they had to work out. And again, they always made this whole thing about going back home. But the problem was that the contestants, because of the money, because of the pressure, they would exercise 8 hours a day. I heard this from every single person that ever won, said, I was exercising 8 hours a day and not eating anything leading up to that final weigh-in. Yeah. So, let's see. So Aubrey Gordon, who was an author and a podcast host, she really is sort of this, I don't know, expert in this field. And she really talks about how the show, just like what everyone else thinks, the show became this sort of extension of this idea of nothing in your life will be as special or as important as getting thin. And that is very much, and the way in which they spoke about this stuff was the most vital thing. The most, I mean, if you don't lose this weight, and they would cast people who had these things, you couldn't have a baby, couldn't get health insurance, like things that very much were connected to their weight. But I feel like they picked those people so that they can show, right? Because then losing the weight, and now you get this other thing. And nothing's as important as this getting thin. And it was an instant hit. And so, the producer said, well, we realized there were a lot of obese people out there, but we didn't want happy obese people. We didn't want happy overweight people. We wanted obese and unhappy people who were really, really unhappy.
Yeah. And they wanted to, like, when the show first started, they'd get people who were, I don't know, maybe 100 pounds overweight or 150
Not even.
pounds.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they started casting people who were like 200 pounds overweight, 300 pounds. And so, to make it more dramatic.
Yeah. And that was the other thing too. The first season, I want to say, like, the women were, maybe the smallest woman was like 180, 90 pounds. I think the largest woman was maybe 220, 230. And then, men, same thing. It was like around 200, women were 200 pounds, men were 300 pounds. And then they kept going up and up and up and up, to the point where they had people that were 550 pounds.
Yeah.
And they needed people that had very, very sad stories, and that were so miserable, so unhappy, and their whole life is miserable because of the weight. So we meet two different women at this point. We meet Joelle Gwynn, who was on season 7. And then we meet Tracy Ukich, who was on season 8. Did you remember either of these? I remember this Tracy now.
I remember
both
beach.
of them.
Yeah, I do remember both of them. Yeah.
Okay. So Tracy was very famous because, and again, you get on the show, and then you're isolated in a hotel room for like 4 or 5 days before the show starts. You're handed this massive contract, this big, thick thing. You're given like no help, no attorney, no nothing, to basically go through this contract. And then if you ask for an attorney, they say, well, yeah, we'll get you an attorney, but we need this done right away. And if you don't sign this and you hire, I think basically they were indicating like, yeah, but we're going to move on to the next person. And you get people that are so desperate, so feel like this is my only hope. So of course they're going to sign. They're going to sign their life away. And for Tracy's season, this was season 8, the same season that Danny Cahill won. The whole idea was they had this bus that dropped them off on the side of the road, and they were going to walk. They were going to have to race the final mile on the beach. So running on the beach, as we all know, is really hard.
Yeah,
really, really hard. Harder than just like regular running. So you've got people that are so sedentary and who are massively overweight, and you're going to make them run a mile with like no prep time or anything. Like, did they stretch? They didn't know. Like literally, they just kind of threw them out. We're like, go.
Well, yeah. And the thing is, Tracy ends up getting very ill, and and has to be, helicoptered out of there. But, throughout the entire show, I was amazed that there weren't more like heart attacks or cardiac events, or maybe there were, and we just never saw them.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, yeah, you take these people who are totally sedentary, very overweight, and then you want to put them on a treadmill and have them run at like the highest level. But
yeah,
how does that and the physical injury, people are falling off of the treadmills. How do people not break bones or worse? So dangerous.
So dangerous. And Joelle, she says that the first day she said, I think we did more than what they do in the military.
Mm-hmm.
And I can believe that. And she said, and what she brought up was this part, because Joelle and Bob had they did not like each other.
Mm-hmm.
And Joelle, for Joelle, Joelle doesn't tell us everything about it, but I get the sense that basically Joelle was very unhappy in her life. And I get the sense that Joelle was being yelled at and abused, or maybe poorly treated by maybe her family and in the past. And so she really started this as inspiration. And she was talking about how one day she hurt her back, and very serious, to hurt your back. And the idea was like, walk it off. And they would say things like, you need to go, you need to fight. We see the scene of Bob yelling, being like, we're going to run for 30 seconds, not 31 seconds, not 29 seconds, but 30 seconds. And it becomes this thing of, it doesn't matter what Joelle says. It doesn't matter if Joelle says, my back is killing me, I can't do this, this is impossible. It doesn't matter, because if you resist, you don't want it enough. You don't care about it. You don't care about the people in your life. And the other one that's really big is they would say to these people like, oh, your back hurts. Well, you don't know your body. You don't know. Like, they would be so dismissive of a lot of these injuries.
Mm-hmm.
And the trainers would see any kind of exhaustion as a pushback of, you don't care. You don't care enough about this. And that was really, really, really psychologically not good.
Well, I wonder, do you think the producers told Bob and Jillian how to act? Like, told them, we want you to get into the gym and, just yell at these people, just give them hell and, act like a drill sergeant? Or do you think they came up with that on their own?
I feel like, and they don't really get into this, but I remember, I could be wrong, but I really remember that they weren't so harsh the first season, that they were a lot nicer. Like, Jillian was always a little bit tougher, but there wasn't the getting in your face and yelling at you in that way. I remember from the first couple seasons. So I think it's like anything else in life, where I think that they saw what was being filmed and what people wanted. And what, I think it was a little more organic than that. But I do think that when they figured out, that was part of the problem. And Bob talks about this, where he says, we're trying to make this entertaining TV show, and diet is boring TV, but working out and yelling, he says, is good TV. And I think what they figured out was that, it's mainly going to be exercise. And so, how are we going to do this? Well, and I think it kind of naturally developed.
Yeah, because they started making these crazy challenges.
Yeah.
These crazy outdoor challenges on these big sets where they were, it just got more and more outrageous.
Well, and one of the things that Joelle talked about was, and that was the fear, was, a lot of times the contestants were kind of questioning, like, should I do this? Should I not? Are you making fun of fat people? And apparently, and I didn't notice that until I watched the show, but they would shake the camera. So if someone fell off a treadmill, they would shake the camera so it looked like an earthquake. Do you know what I mean? They would do these things, and they would put them in situations where they were going to look foolish. They were going to look silly and dumb. And I think the contestants were realizing more and more like, oh, okay, if I play along with this, then things are good. If I don't, then I'm in trouble. So, yes. And then we meet Rob, who's Uzinga, who I didn't know Rob's full story. Like, he was the Dr. H's story. Like he was the Raiders. He worked for the Raiders.
Mm-hmm.
And then every given Sunday was about his life, kind of, sort of. He wrote that. And yeah, I didn't realize.
The character in the movie was based on him, that Any Given Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but let's see. Yeah. So what he was saying, which is very true, what we were just saying, which is that each year, because they kept upping the amount of weight that each person had to lose, what Dr. H was saying is that, and then, conversely, that people, they had more weight to lose, but it was harder for them to work out. That was the other part of it too. It was like the show really was about working out, but you keep getting people that are bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And what he was saying is like, that makes it harder and harder it's going to be more strain and stress on your body to go from 0 to 60 the way
Did they over time increase the amount of the prize money? No, it always stayed the same.
Always $250,000, which I always thought
$50,000, at least now in this. It's not that much money.
No, it's not.
After
honestly,
taxes, they're going to take half of it. So it's not life changing.
Yeah, I've been watching Project Runway this season, and it's like the prize is $200,000. I'm like, what's that going to do for any of these designers? Like $200,000 after taxes, after all that,
they're only going to get $100,000 after taxes,
and you're supposed to launch a business with that. A fashion business in New York. It's just ridiculous. Yeah, I always thought that was super chintzy. The 250, or they should have increased it over the years. So anyway, but then we see Tracy, we meet Tracy. So Tracy was a really hated character, a person. Like people really disliked Tracy because after she was helicoptered out, and I guess, oh wait, hold on. So, we go back to Tracy, sorry, and we see the scene of her like collapsing at the beach. She collapses on the beach. The other contestant pick her up and basically kind of carry her over the line. And again, she could not make it across the line. Like there is something about that too. Yeah, she could not walk. And she collapsed.
She couldn't even crawl. She was dying. She was going into organ failure. Yeah. Multiple organ failure.
So, and this leads into episode 2 where we learn more about Tracy. And basically what we learn about Tracy is, and I don't know how much people knew about all this stuff, but that she was really miserable. She was in a horrible marriage. She had a husband that yelled at her, that was disrespectful, that was cheating on her. And at one point she said, I didn't want to be harmed anymore. So she doesn't come out and say anything definitive, but obviously this was a very abusive relationship that she was in. And she was in this place of like being in the hospital and like going, this is my second chance. Like, I got to stay. What am I going to go home to? And I think there was a lot of anger and frustration because Tracy really followed Dr. H's advice, which was don't start working out right away. Like Dr. H was like, again, Dr. H was approaching Tracy the way a professional should, which is, okay, let's slow down. And this is what you need to do. But then she's villainized by the other contestants and by the trainers.
Well, probably.
So what is she to do?
Like, that's not fair. How could she doesn't have to work out? And that's not fair. I'm sure that was just at the core of it. They're just pissed because they have to continue to do these god awful workouts.
And then there's a whole other thing about like Dr. H saying, I always told them to eat all their calories. And then, and again, they apparently, Dr. H didn't want them to be able to drink coffee constantly because it does change your...
It's a diuretic.
And it also dampens your cravings and not so hungry. Appetite. That's the word I'm looking for. Appetite. Yes. So it was just, the whole thing was so weird because it was like, so you can have caffeine, but you can't have limited caffeine, or you can't have caffeine at all. And so, oh God, you're all doing all these workouts without any caffeine at all, without, but but could you have energy drinks? I mean, it was just like, it just seemed to be these weird rules of things. But yeah, and then we get Bob talking about how Bob felt like Dr. H had a God complex. He's like, you know how doctors are. They have God complexes. I'm like, so do you, Bob.
So do trainers like you.
Psych Legal Pop will be back after these messages.
Chicago, 2011. A cop is murdered. Police and prosecutors swear they have the trigger man. He swears he didn't do it. How far will each side go to prove they're right?
Like it's just one bombshell after another, where you're like, what?
The story of a PlayStation, a brain-eating amoeba, and the relentless pursuit of justice. Off Duty, out now. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Howdy, howdy, ho, and welcome to Fantasy Fan Fellas. I'm Hayden, producer of the Fantasy Fangirls podcast and your resident lover of all things Sanderson.
And I'm Steven, your bookish internet goofball, but you can call me the Smash Daddy.
And we are currently deep diving Brandon Sanderson's fantasy epic, Mistborn. But here's the catch. Steven here has not read Mistborn before.
That's right, hey. So each week, you'll get my unfiltered, raw reactions to every single chapter.
And along the way, we'll do character deep dives, magic explainers, and Steven will even try to guess what's next. Spoiler alert, he'll be wrong.
Newsflash, I'm never wrong. Episodes come out every Wednesday, and you can find Fantasy Fan Fellas wherever you get your podcasts.
And so one of the things, I keep forgetting her name, Aubrey mentions is that there's a lot of, and it's really around the getting in your face, Jillian especially, but both Jillian and Bob would get in their faces and tell them. And basically what they were saying to this yelling in their face basically is telling them, I need to yell at you and abuse you and scare you and frighten you in order for you to change. And what Aubrey's talking about is she's saying, once you're fat, I'm allowed to treat you however I see fit. Because I do wonder if this was another issue, if this was another kind of medical issue that people had, would you be getting in their faces and yelling at them?
People aren't screaming at alcoholics and drug addicts who are in treatment. They're not in their faces screaming at them.
Well, and actually that was the mentality for a long time. That was the mentality. It was about like breaking you down to build you up. Mm-hmm. But what they found from all the research and the science and why addiction medicine has changed so much in the last 30 years is the yelling just shamed them. There is such shame in, for each of these contestants, there's they already feel shamed enough. Mm-hmm. And basically it's this idea of what was being reinforced was abuse is good for them. And if you collapse, then you're telling me you don't want to be here enough. So it's a losing place where, again, that's the whole question of, yes, Danny made the choice to do, to starve himself and do all these crazy workouts. But if up until that point, he had been yelled at for 12 weeks and been getting these messages like, you can't trust yourself. You have to prove us that you want it enough. You don't think that person's going to start to like push the line. And I think that's one of the big things about this documentary that I thought was fascinating is whose responsibility is this? Like, is this, yes, these are all adults making these choices, but if something's being yelled at and you're isolated, I don't know. I mean, you can kind of, I mean, I don't know. I'm not, again, they made their own choices, but I do wonder psychologically where you're kind of mentally at by the end of that. That's all.
Well, also, you've come so far. I mean, you've come so far. You go home. You don't have no one's forcing you to work out. So, yeah, it's hard. You don't want to fail. And so it's really hard. So yeah, I'd probably do the same thing. I'd probably just drink the cayenne pepper drink or whatever too, you know?
Yeah, and you're on national television. And this was a huge
you don't want to be
primetime show.
humiliated. Yeah.
What,
and you know,
40,
you have
50 million people watching. I mean,
you
yeah.
have to go back. Yeah. That's part of your contract. You've got to go back for that final weigh in. And it's a lot.
But Tracy caused a lot of drama because she was like willing to do what she wasn't working out with everybody else. So she wasn't bonded with them. So she was a bit of this outsider. She was, she basically was like willing to do whatever it took. And they would have these temptations, these exercises. And, they basically said, we'll give you who's willing to take this advantage. And Tracy stepped over the line and said, I will. Mm-hmm. And again, that was seen as wrong or bad. And this one thing that Jillian said about Tracy, she said, I want to pound her within an inch of her life.
Oh my God.
They all wanted to get rid of her. There was one point at which she had a huge weight loss one week. And they wanted to get rid of her so bad. They wanted her to fall below the line.
Yeah.
So the dreaded yellow line or red line or whatever they called it. And so she lost 11 pounds. No one clapped for her. And then Bob and Jillian didn't clap for her. So again, because if Bob and Jillian, you are trainers and you are saying to us, your ultimate goal is to help these people lose weight so that they will live, so they won't die. She just lost 11 pounds, but she wasn't willing to be yelled at by you. Do you know what I mean? She wasn't putting up with your crapola.
But she also proved that, she didn't need them yelling at her to lose weight. Mm-hmm. She lost 11 pounds by herself.
Yeah.
Just, I guess, following the diet.
And she may have done the workouts. I mean, but that's the whole thing. It's like Bob and Jill, you can't have it both ways. You cannot sit there and not clap for her.
Well, this documentary really, I think, put an end to any positive feelings about these two, about Bob.
Oh God, Jillian. I mean, we talked about this on our bonus, but Jillian Michaels is.
Jillian Michaels has, I don't know, she's
lost her mind.
Yeah, she's gone in another direction. She's now, I don't know. She's just, I don't even know what I would call it, but she's going around saying a lot of wackadoo things. Mm-hmm. And, because I don't think people really like her. You know what I mean? She can't get a show. I mean, she hasn't had a show. I mean, after The Biggest Loser, I feel like she maybe had a couple of different shows. I remember she had a reality show with her and her family. I don't know, but no one likes her anymore. And so now she's just decided to double down and be even more unlikable.
Yes.
And Bob Harper, he was laughing like a maniacal asshole.
Yeah.
And all of this just laughing. Everyone is so fucking stupid. They came off like so horrible. There's no coming back for them.
No. Well, what's interesting is if you've been on TikTok, since the documentaries aired, a bunch of former contestants have gone on TikTok to talk about their experiences. Mm-hmm. And, apparently there was a lot more that was happening behind the scenes. And, what was the other? Oh, and then other people were coming forward who had just had encounters, like not connected to the show at all. Like one guy was talking about meeting Bob Harper before The Biggest Loser at a gym in West Hollywood. And Bob treated him like crap. Mm-hmm. That Bob was a dick then. So I think that, and I think up until that point, don't forget, they were training the beautiful people. They were They were getting paid $500 an hour.
I highly doubt that. Or what do you say, Julia Roberts?
Julia Roberts took one of his classes.
Yeah, and
I'm sure she did
classes.
I'm sure she took his class. But yeah, you go from that sort of mentality to this. Then
Well, there was another trainer who they did not profile in the show. Maybe he didn't want to be a part of it, but that guy, I think his name was Duvall.
Yes. And there was another Hawaiian woman, I remember. There were other trainers at other points, but yes, he was there for a while. The black guy. He was there for a while,
but he was really nice. He was too nice.
Yes.
He didn't yell at people. And so that's probably why they got rid of
make
him.
it.
But yeah,
Yeah.
he was not mentioned in this documentary. I don't know why.
And then we meet, do you remember Olivia, Ward, and Hannah? Remember the sisters?
Oh, yeah.
Olivia was the season 11 winner, and her sister Hannah was the runner-up. And we meet the two of them. And what I think is very interesting about them, because they're very popular, and they are two that look like, listen, they're not as thin as they once were, but they both look like they are, working, that they've managed to keep enough weight off that they are healthy and happy, and it's what works for them in their life. But I remember thinking, like, I think that they were able to get through this and see this in a different way, because I think they were two very grounded people that really understood who they were. And I think that's part of it. Is I think that if you're a grounded person who understands who you are, and it all works for you, right? Like, I think Olivia and Hannah, this worked for them. The relationship with Bob, the way they were talked to, all of those things. And I think Bob was probably a lot nicer to them, whether he would admit that or not. Like, I think that he very much disliked Joelle. And I'm sorry, but if you dislike someone and you really like this person over there, yelling at them is going to feel differently. You're going to yell differently. And I think,
right.
But Olivia talks about this, that at first the producer said that they weren't fat enough. And she was like, well, I'm going to tell you why we'd be good for the show, because we both need to lose 80 to 100 pounds. And the people that are at home, that's what they need to lose. I am representing them. I was like, good for you. But that was, again, the big thing is Olivia had, she was dealing with infertility. She had been trying to conceive a baby. And it was like these people were going through super hard things. And the show wanted to go into these do all this deep emotional work. But they did not want to hire credentialed people. And that was the other part of it too. And how they never got a suicide. That's the other part of it too. You've got people who are dealing with stuff, and obviously stuff that we don't even know the extent of it. You bring them here, you strip away the thing that they've been using to comfort themselves. You put them in this situation, and then you ask them to just expose themselves raw. And how people didn't go crazy, I don't know.
Yeah, no, instead they have Bob and Jillian act as pseudo psychologists and, give people pep talks.
Yeah.
That was very dangerous.
Very dangerous. And the whole thing with Bob was yelling at Joelle the whole time. And he said his big thing is he determined that Joelle liked to talk more than she liked to work out. And so, he had to spend extra time with her. And then he convinced himself that Joelle, because she liked to talk more than she liked to work out, I need to save her. So I need to make sure that she works out. But he never stopped to ask himself, is there something else going on? And Joelle talks about she felt abused by Bob, embarrassed. And she said all of that cursing brought her back to home. And it doesn't, and that was the thing. I think that she was being abused or made fun of or something at home with her family. Something was going on. And what she was essentially saying that Bob could not hear was, you yelling at me isn't working. I'm not going to ever respond to this. And instead of him going, oh, this is what Joelle needs. It's almost like she's fat. She doesn't know what she needs. She's fat and disgusting. How did she get here? She can't make good decisions. I'm going to determine for her how she needs to lose this weight. And that's the fatal flaw of a lot of this.
Yeah.
So anyway, Joelle really, I felt for her. She had a whole thing with her partner, Carla, and Joelle was made to be really the scapegoat. Of this thing. And same thing, Tracy, she finally gets kicked off. And apparently, so for Tracy's big reveal, they're like, okay, we're going to put you back on a helicopter and have you go see your family. Didn't even ask her, like, do you want to be on a helicopter? Are you okay being on a helicopter? She's like panicking. They don't ever ask her. And and then she gets back home and realizes her marriage is over. So yeah. And then, there's this whole other thing too about how it evolved. Like Olivia and Hannah ended up on the cover of a fitness magazine. They were kind of the first like non-celebrity, non-trainers to be on the fitness magazine. They started, everything started to become licensed and branded, and the entire show became one giant commercial. Mm-hmm. And that was, they were talking about, did Biggest Loser ever jump the shark? And I think that when it was like going from Subway to Wrigley's gum, it was like gum, to Jenny-O turkey. What were some of the other things? I mean, it was one product placement after another. And it was so obvious. And that's all because the show was so popular, they made it really long. So they made it like 2 hours, which it did not need to be, but they needed to fill all this time. And essentially it became 2 hours of yelling, working out, hearing sad, sad stories, and the product placements, and then the big weigh-in. And it was rinse and repeat.
I feel like at that point, if I was even still watching it, I can't remember, but I probably just fast forwarded through most of it. Mm-hmm. Like, let's just get to the end, see who gets eliminated. Or that's
what I started doing too. I just started fast forwarding through the workouts. I fast forwarded through a lot of it. It was very much like,
it was boring,
super boring. Yeah. And you did want to hear the stories. Like if you like someone, you want to hear the stories. You want to see how they were doing. Oh, wait. Okay, great. And then you move on. But yeah, I would watch the show in like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then if everyone remembers, there was a big New York Times expose about the backlash against the show. So apparently a study had been done where I guess the study was very small, but someone studied a group of people that had been on The Biggest Loser. And I guess it was of 14 of the 16 contestants, they found that every single person gained weight. And that they attributed that to that your metabolism would slow down and that created permanent damage. And they did have I guess they did push back on this. And I guess Dr. H and no, that was a different thing that they sued. But they basically, another doctor came in and said, yes, a rapid weight loss can change your metabolism. But this was a very small study and there was no control group. Mm-hmm. So there was no group where you took them where they all lost lots of weight in a different method and to see if they would gain the weight back. The problem was you're kind of comparing.
Yeah.
So it wasn't very fair, but I do remember when those stories came out and that a lot of it was debunked. But the one thing that someone did finally say, this doctor was like, there's all these other factors. Your genetic makeup is a huge factor. And I'm sure we all know this. I know people who are so goddamn skinny that eat like shit, drink regular Coke, never see them eat a vegetable. Like we all know that that's skinniness, and being skinny has got nothing to do with how healthy you are. But again, it didn't matter for the show. And then Bob says this thing that I thought was really interesting, which is he says, the thing about his big theory about weight loss or struggles with weight is that you can never get this monkey off your back. You will spend the rest of your life struggling, being fat, struggling with food, that you will never that it is a constant thing. And I was like, well, yes and no. The problem is that you didn't teach anyone how to have a different relationship with themselves and their body and food. So no, because what you told them and taught them was you're fat, you should be shamed, you need to be yelled at. The only acceptance is extreme thinness and do anything you can to get there.
Yeah.
So that's what they learned.
Well, and the interesting thing is towards the end of the documentary, they start talking a little bit about like Ozempic and GLP-1s and the women who they interviewed, they all were still thin, pretty thin. And I was thinking, gosh, well, maybe they just like changed their habits, whatever. But it turned out that no, I think they're all on Ozempic.
Yeah.
And that's why they're so thin. Mm-hmm. And the one woman, who was the blonde woman?
Oh, yeah. We meet her in the third one. Yeah. Suzanne.
Yeah. And she freely says, she says, it turns off the food noise and that works for me. And that's the thing. People who overeat have like a voice in their head that's, it's called the food noise. That's like perfect explanation. And it's and Ozempic and those things, that really does turn it off.
Yeah.
You are not thinking about food. You don't crave food. You're not hungry.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a lot of other problems. But it does. That is what it does.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's true. I mean, if you've been using food to comfort yourself your whole life, it's no different than using alcohol to comfort yourself or anything else. And yeah, it is going to be your thing for life, that you're going to have to, it's just part of your life.
Yes. And though I think that it goes beyond the food, right? Where we see a lot of times where people will get the gastric bypass, they'll get the sleeve, and then they'll become alcoholics.
Right.
And I've seen that a lot. And I've worked with
what
those
do they
people
call it?
that become
Transfer addiction or something.
Yeah. And that's a thing because so yeah, I mean, and I think that's why the GLP-1s, I think maybe might have I don't know. We'll see what happens. But, I think that noise is very powerful. And so just working out 8 hours a day isn't going to turn off the noise.
No.
I'm sure that, having the noise turn off it's very, very powerful. And one of the things that we meet Suzanne, who's a cop, and God, she goes through a whole bunch of stuff. The New York police, so sexist. It was just the crapola that woman had to go through.
Yeah.
But we are back to Ryan, and he went to them, and apparently Joelle tried to talk to the producers after the fact, and she never got any, they basically just ship them back home.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like Dr. H and Tracy remain friends. So I guess he would talk to them. But Ryan basically said, well, can we have some kind of aftercare program? Like and what is very true is they're making hundreds of millions of dollars from this show. This was billions. I think they probably made they had to make at least $1 billion with everything they had. And so the producers claimed that they didn't have the money to do it. And I believe that the producers didn't have the money to do it. It was NBC. It was like the people that were making all the money was NBC.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was, basically, let's call it what it is. It wasn't Biggest Loser. It was NBC, who did not want to spend a fraction of the money. Like so little money could have helped all of these people. But yeah,
and when they asked the producers about that, about why couldn't they have aftercare?
Mm-hmm.
They also had this real flippant attitude about it. Like, what? This is a TV show.
Yeah.
This at the end of the day, this is a TV show. It's like, okay, but these people sacrificed a lot, and you messed with them a lot for them to come and be on this TV show that made so much money. And you can't you don't see the value in.
Well, but then you can't say that you're changing people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot say that you are saving lives, changing people's lives. So again, that's what which one is it? Is it a TV show, or are you saving people's lives? And that was the problem, is all of these producers and Bob, they all wanted to say, well, it can be both. And it's like, no, it can't be. It can't be. It has to be one or the other. So if you're Bob, own your shit. Like that's the part. It's like, because they do show, is this, oh yeah, sorry. We get into this in a minute, but then Joelle, Suzanne, some of the other contestants, they're kind of pissed about the way in which they've been treated and the way they've been seen. So they go to the New York Post, and the Post apparently writes this expose, puts Joelle right in the front cover, and took everything out of context, made it seem like they were pushing drugs on them. And, Joelle didn't get into like what she said versus what was said, but she and Dr. H sued New York Post. We don't know exactly what happened, but I remember this. So do you remember Rachel Fredrickson?
Mm-hmm.
So Rachel Fredrickson was the winner of, I want to say she was kind of like the winner of 13 or 14, something towards the end. And I think she really was the one that was so shocking, because when she came out on the final episode, she had lost so much weight. And I remember that. And I remember everyone's jaw dropped open. And you would see Jillian and Bob shocked, like mortified and shocked. And again, it's a little bit like, you didn't think that this was going to happen eventually? Like, it's like they're so shocked and surprised this happened, but she was tiny. And then it became about, well, they took it too far. And again, we're back to a bit of what Aubrey's talking about and what people feel, which is, oh, lose weight, lose weight, lose weight. Do whatever you can to stay on the show. You need to keep your life. Wait a second, you went too far. That's too much. It's back to that whole Barbie movie thing of like, you know, you can't be too fat. You can't be too thin. You can't be too this. You can't be too that. It's like, you know, where are people supposed to be? So essentially and then this is what prompted, apparently that's what prompted Jillian to leave the show. I don't know if that's true or not, but it was canceled after 17 seasons. So in 2017, Bob Harper is working out at the gym, and guess what? He has a heart attack and is in a coma for 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people had a lot of feelings about that because he would yell in everybody's faces about how they were going to die.
You're going to die.
You're going to die. You're going to die. You're going to die. And
and that also shows, that goes back to genetics.
Mm-hmm.
This is a man who works out and takes care of his body, but there was something about his body that caused him to have a heart attack at a pretty young age and being in good health. So you just, you know, you don't have control. Mm-hmm. We do not have control over everything that has to do with our bodies.
Yes. Well, he does admit, he's like, well, you know, after I got out of the hospital, it was the hardest thing I ever went through. I finally understand how hard it is to have to watch every single calorie, examine everything that you do, change every aspect of your life in order to make these changes. Because I think Bob, for the first time, because I bet you Bob always worked out and probably ate well, but I don't think Bob really watched every last thing that he put in his mouth. I think he was able to, I think he probably genetically, again, I think he had the genes for it. And I think that, you know, again, but I think this was the first time. And there was he seemed to have some awareness that this is what the contestants went through. But at the same time, you would think there would be an aha moment for him of like, I see now the light, but it's like, no light. No light. So yeah. And then we meet people. I mean, Tracy's happier. And she remarried. And here's the thing that she says that I think is very important, which is they asked her, they said, you know, would you do it again? And she's like, I don't know if I would do it again. And, you know, about whole changing your life. And she said, you know, I changed my life. The show didn't change my life. I changed my life. And that's absolutely, and this is, again, the other part of this is change happens, yes, from within. Real change, and I would say this to clients all the time, which is, I get that people want to see change happen like on The Biggest Loser Extreme Makeover, because that's entertaining. But I said, real change are small incremental steps. And it's your mindset and how you see things and you making that change and you caring enough. And really, truly, Tracy changed her. Actually, in spite of the show, she actually changed her life because the show was telling her everything that she was doing, standing up for herself, right? This is a woman that did not feel like she had a voice in her marriage. There she goes. She has a voice for herself. She's got Dr. H, who really seems to care about her. She's following his advice, but she's the villain. And people would write the nastiest things. Like, there's this thing where we see her on Jay Leno and people are like, if I saw you in a crosswalk, I wouldn't slow down, you know, to hit you. And I hope your children hate you. I mean,
Jay Leno has not aged well. We see so many clips of him in all these different documentaries.
Oh God, yeah, from Lewinsky to
just saying the most horrible things. God, what a jerk.
Yeah, and again, because it was obviously our culture has changed, but not that much. But yeah, I mean, and I think that's part of it. And so I know that I heard this from a lot of young women who watched that show when they were in high school. And so I'm very, very grateful that I was an adult, a married adult, when I watched the show, because I can't imagine watching that show in high school and watching that at a vulnerable place. And there were a lot of young people that watched the show that I think it really screwed them up. So at the very end, we hear that Jillian would not participate. As we know, Jillian's now talking about suing, because apparently she has all these receipts, but apparently the receipts are kind of like, huh? Like,
well, yeah, they accused her of giving caffeine. Well, I think she admitted it.
yeah, she admitted it. She said caffeine supplements
to her her team, and she saw nothing wrong with that. But
yeah, but that was the other part of it. Like, she gave them caffeine pills, but they could have coffee, but they couldn't have unlimited coffee. But she wanted them to have the pills, but not coffee. It was still a little unclear. But so Dr. H and Joelle, they sued the New York Post. And then this final stat is in 2004, when the show aired, 32% of the population was obese. Americans were obese. In 2025, 45% of the population is obese. So yet again, that's the thing. True, lasting, concrete change, it isn't sexy. And so it will never be a TV show.
Yeah.
It's not interesting. Yeah.
I have a problem with their definition of obese, because I think they're still using that by the BMI charts that were developed for like men coming back from starved men coming back from World War II or something. I mean, it's a completely unscientific, meaningless number, but yet we're still using it. Yes. So by that metric, then half the country is obese, but what does that even mean? I don't know. God, yeah. This problem just keeps getting worse despite all the things that we have. I don't know.
Yeah, because we're more sedentary. I mean, that's right. We all saw this in COVID when everyone gained weight during COVID, unless the people that spent all the time like working out. But I mean, you don't realize like how much exercise you're getting just by like getting on the train, running up the steps, running down here, going here, going there. So that, I mean, I think we saw that with that. I think, our food is not good.
Our food is
it's bad and
processed, whatever. Yeah.
And with these tariffs and everything else that's going on in the world, the cost of things, and I don't blame people for, buying a big bag of rice and a big thing of pasta, because that is the cheapest. I mean, that's the other part of it. These overly processed, simple carbs are the cheapest things to buy. So I mean, if you've got a huge family and you've got no money, what are you going to do? So there is a lot. I mean, to have this ideal diet, to meal plan, to do. I mean, it's a luxury.
It's a total luxury.
It's such a luxury. And and if you are not a professional athlete, or if you are not someone who is a dancer or on a stage, an actor, singer, it's impossible to maintain. It's just impossible to maintain unless you have no kids. I mean, like literally you have to have very little on your plate.
Yeah. And even then, you got to work, you got to, who feels like working out after, a long day at work?
Yeah, nobody.
There's some crazy people do, but I don't know. I used to work when I first started being a lawyer. I used to work out every single day after work and on Saturday.
Wow. I'm impressed.
Yeah. Well, my office was like right next door to Gold's Gym. That helped, but just walk downstairs. Anyway.
Yeah. It's hard. It's all really hard, but I thought this was really well done, really interesting. And these are the kinds of documentaries that I always find really fascinating. These like sort of like larger questions of whose responsibility is this? Is this right? Is this wrong? And I mean, obviously I'm fascinated by change and people. And again, we've learned so much more just from the time that Biggest Loser premiered to now about change and about self-compassion. And what does it mean to be compassionate with yourself? And it doesn't mean, to sort of see yourself as human and doesn't mean that you're letting yourself off the hook. It's about learning how to speak to yourself differently. And that's a lot of the work that I do with the bulk of my clients, is helping them change that drill sergeant voice in their head into a much kinder, nicer place, and putting the power back into their hands of them. You're in control. You make the decisions. You decide what's going to work for you, and that kind of thing. So,
yeah, it's also amazing how things change. I mean, this is 20 years ago, which in a way seems like a long time ago, but then in a way it doesn't.
Yeah.
And, this is happening with all kinds of, areas. It's constant, areas of our lives where we just have these shifts, these shifts in thinking. And I guess that means we're evolving and growing. I don't know.
I think so.
But then in other ways, it's like not, I don't know.
Yeah. And I don't know. I don't know if it's like we need someone outside of something to really see what the truth is. I mean, I think Monica Lewinsky is a great example of, right? It's really been these younger generations that have kind of gone, this is effed up. Like, wait, why was she the villain? I mean, I think that maybe it was like, unless you were, maybe that's what it takes to see history. I don't know. But we don't seem to learn from history that much. We don't, not as much as we should.
No, we have short attention spans.
Yes, we do. We do. All right. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoy us and enjoy our show, please go check out our Patreon. You get all the shows ad-free. You get a weekly bonus, and then our higher tier gets an Ask Us Anything and a monthly true crime that's just exclusive for Patreon. This month we are doing Amanda Knox. Please give us a 5-star rating and review if you haven't already. Follow us on social media. We're on YouTube. Hello, if you're watching, please subscribe there. And I think that's it. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Howdy, howdy, ho, and welcome to Fantasy Fan Fellas. I'm Hayden, producer of the Fantasy Fangirls podcast and your resident lover of all things Sanderson.
And I'm Steven, your bookish internet goofball, but you can call me the Smash Daddy.
And we are currently deep diving Brandon Sanderson's fantasy epic, Mistborn. But here's the catch. Steven here has not read Mistborn before.
That's right, hey. So each week, you'll get my unfiltered, raw reactions to every single chapter.
And along the way, we'll do character deep dives, magic explainers, and Steven will even try to guess what's next. Spoiler alert, he'll be wrong.
Newsflash, I'm never wrong. Episodes come out every Wednesday, and you can find Fantasy Fan Fellas wherever you get your podcasts.
Give me a mountain with lots to do. Give me the sunshine, give me a dew. Give me something simple and true. All I need is sunshine and a cool, refreshing mountain dew. So give me my good friends, give me a dew.
Grab some friends and an ice-cold Mountain Dew today.
Mountain Dew.
Hello, listeners. Meet Lisa.
Hey there.
Lisa runs an online boutique specializing in sustainable fashion. With Acast, she found a whole new way to reach eco-conscious shoppers.
Yep, I recorded a quick ad targeted listeners interested in fashion and sustainability using Acast's audience attributes targeting feature and set my budget. Before I knew it, people all over were hearing about my shop.
Now that's a smart way to grow your business. Hey Lisa, what's trending right now?
Shopping sustainably, and my sales, of course.
Start reaching your ideal audience through podcast ads with Acast. Visit go.acast.com/advertise to get started.